Marcus Thompson stood in the middle of the break room, his pressed white shirt now soaked in steaming hot coffee, while the entire office stared at him in complete silence. Victoria Ashford, the senior marketing director with her designer heels and perfectly manicured nails, didn't even bother to apologize. Instead, she looked him up and down with disgust and said, "Maybe if you weren't always dragging yourself in here looking half dead, you would have seen me coming. Clean this up before someone important slips." She walked away without a second glance, leaving Marcus standing there, humiliated, as his colleagues quickly looked away, pretending they hadn't witnessed what just happened. But what Victoria didn't know was that Marcus Thompson was hiding something so powerful, so unexpected, that when she finally discovered the truth, her entire world would come crashing down around her. Before we continue with this incredible story, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Marcus had been working at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions for 8 months. 8 long, grueling months of being overlooked, underestimated, and treated like he was invisible. He worked in the data analytics department, a position that most people in the company considered beneath their attention. Every morning, he would arrive at exactly 7:30, a full hour before most employees, and every evening, he would leave well after 6, sometimes 7. He never complained. He never made excuses. He just did his work quietly and efficiently, keeping his head down and his mouth shut. But Marcus had a reason for his exhaustion, a reason for the dark circles under his eyes, a reason for the way he sometimes zoned out during meetings. At home, waiting for him in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of the city, was his 7-year-old daughter, Zoe. Zoe was his entire world, his reason for breathing, his motivation for enduring every insult and every slight that came his way at Pinnacle. She was also the reason he couldn't afford to lose his job, no matter how badly he was treated. Marcus had become a single father 3 years ago when his wife, Denise, lost a battle with cancer. Those final months had drained everything from him, his savings, his energy, his hope. But through it all, Zoe had been his anchor. She had her mother's eyes, those big brown eyes that seemed to see right through to your soul. And every time Marcus felt like giving up, all he had to do was look into those eyes and remember why he kept fighting. Victoria Ashford knew nothing about Marcus's life outside of work. To her, he was just another faceless employee, someone beneath her notice. Victoria had climbed the corporate ladder through a combination of ambition, ruthlessness, and family connections. Her father, William Ashford, was one of the original investors in Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. While Victoria was undeniably talented, everyone knew that a rapid rise through the ranks had more to do with her last name than her actual abilities. But no one dared say that to her face. Victoria was 34 years old, beautiful in a cold, calculated way, with sharp features and eyes that could freeze water. She wore her success like armor, designer clothes, expensive jewelry, a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. But beneath all that polish was something broken, something she had spent years trying to hide. Victoria Ashford was deeply, profoundly unhappy, though she would never admit it to anyone, least of all herself. The coffee incident was not an isolated event. Victoria had been targeting Marcus for weeks, ever since he had made the mistake of correcting her during a meeting. It had been a small thing, a minor error in one of her presentations, a decimal point in the wrong place that would have made the company's quarterly projections look ridiculous. Marcus had pointed it out quietly, respectfully, trying to save her from embarrassment. But Victoria didn't see it that way. She saw it as a challenge to her authority, a public humiliation from someone she considered beneath her. From that day forward, she made his life miserable. She questioned his work in front of others. She assigned him impossible deadlines and then berated him when he couldn't meet them. She made snide comments about his appearance, his background, his education. And through it all, Marcus endured it silently because he couldn't afford to fight back. He needed this job. Zoe needed him to keep this job. His co-workers noticed what was happening, but no one spoke up. They were all too afraid of Victoria, too worried about their own positions to risk drawing her attention. Marcus understood. He didn't blame them. In a place like Pinnacle, survival meant keeping your head down and hoping the predators would find someone else to prey upon. There was one person, however, who did show Marcus kindness. Her name was Eleanor Chen, and she worked in the Human Resources Department. Eleanor was in her 50s, a gentle woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She had noticed the way Victoria treated Marcus, and while she couldn't openly confront the senior marketing director, she did what she could to help. She made sure Marcus's paperwork was always processed quickly. She checked in on him from time to time, asking how he was doing, really asking, not just making small talk. And she let him know, in a subtle way, that he wasn't alone. One afternoon, about a week after the coffee incident, Eleanor stopped by Marcus's desk with a cup of tea. She set it down gently and looked at him with those kind eyes. "How are you holding up?" she asked softly. Marcus managed a tired smile. "I'm fine, Mrs. Chen. Just busy. You know how it is." Eleanor nodded, but her eyes said she wasn't fooled. "You know, Marcus, I've been working here for 23 years. I've seen a lot of people come and go. Some of them let this place change them, turn them into something hard and cold. But others, the special ones, they hold on to who they are no matter what. Don't let anyone take that from you." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. "I won't," he said. "I promise." Eleanor patted his shoulder and walked away, leaving Marcus to stare at the tea she had brought him. It was such a small gesture, but in that moment, it meant everything. That evening, Marcus picked up Zoe from the after-school program at her elementary school. She came running toward him with her backpack bouncing and her braids flying, her face lit up with that smile that always made his heart feel like it might boast. "Daddy!" she shouted, throwing her arms around him. "Hey, baby girl," he said, scooping her up and holding her tight. "How was your day?" "It was good. We learned about butterflies and how they start as caterpillars and then they change into something completely different. Isn't that cool?" Marcus smiled, kissing her forehead. "That is very cool. You know what? People can do that too. Sometimes people change into something completely different." Zoe looked at him with those big brown eyes, so much like her mother's. "Do you think you'll change, Daddy?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I think I already have, sweetheart. The day you were born, I became someone completely new, someone better." They walked home together, hand in hand, and for a little while, Marcus forgot about Victoria Ashford and Pinnacle Marketing Solutions and all the stress that waited for him there. For a little while, he was just a father with his daughter, and that was enough. But the peace never lasted long. The next day at work, Victoria called Marcus into her office. He walked in with his stomach churning, knowing that nothing good ever came from these meetings. Victoria was sitting behind her massive desk, her fingers steepled, her expression unreadable. "Close the door," she said. Marcus obeyed, then stood waiting, his hands clasped in front of him. Victoria let him stand there for almost a full minute before speaking, a power play designed to make him feel small. "Finally," she said, "I've been reviewing your work on the Henderson account. It's subpar. Frankly, I'm disappointed." Marcus felt a flash of anger, quickly suppressed. The Henderson account had been a nightmare from the start, a project that had been mismanaged long before it landed on his desk. He had worked overtime every night for 2 weeks trying to salvage it, and the results had actually been impressive, given the circumstances. But he knew better than to argue. "I'm sorry you feel that way," he said carefully. "If you have specific feedback, I'd be happy to make revisions." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Specific feedback? You want specific feedback." She stood up and walked around the desk, stopping just inches from him. Here's my specific feedback. You're mediocre. You're barely competent. And the only reason you still have a job here is because firing you would mean actually having to train someone new. And frankly, you're not worth the paperwork. Marcus felt the words hit him like physical blows, but he kept his face neutral. He had learned long ago that showing emotion only gave people like Victoria more power. "Is there anything else?" he asked quietly. Victoria smiled, a cold, cruel smile. "Yes, actually. The Peterson project needs someone to input data over the weekend. I'm volunteering you. Be here Saturday morning at 8. And don't expect overtime pay. Consider it an investment in your continued employment." Marcus wanted to scream. Saturday was Zoe's dance recital. She had been practicing for months, and he had promised her he would be there in the front row, cheering her on. But what choice did he have? If he refused, Victoria would find a way to fire him. He knew she was looking for any excuse. "I'll be there," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. That night, he had to tell Zoe that he wouldn't be able to make her recital. It was one of the hardest things he had ever done. She tried to be brave about it, telling him it was okay, that she understood, but he could see the disappointment in her eyes. And when he heard her crying softly in her room later that night, it broke something inside him. He sat on the edge of a bed and stroked her hair. "I'm so sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault, Daddy," she whispered. "I know you have to work." But it felt like his fault. It felt like he was failing her, just like he felt like he was failing at everything else. Saturday came, and Marcus went to the office as ordered. The building was empty except for him and the security guard, a quiet older man named George who gave Marcus a sympathetic nod as he signed in. Marcus sat at his desk, staring at the data he was supposed to input, but his mind was elsewhere. Right now, Zoe was putting on her costume. Right now, she was warming up with her dance class. Right now, she was looking out at the audience, searching for his face and not finding it. He worked through the morning, his movements mechanical, his heart heavy. At noon, his phone buzzed with a text from the mother of one of Zoe's classmates, a woman named Patricia who had offered to take Zoe to the recital so she wouldn't have to miss it. The text said simply, "She was amazing. You would have been so proud." There was a photo attached, Zoe on stage, mid-leap, her face radiant with joy. Marcus stared at the photo for a long time, tears streaming down his face. He saved it to his phone and made it his new wallpaper. Then he wiped his eyes, took a deep breath, and went back to work. He didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. 3 weeks later, Pinnacle Marketing Solutions announced that they were being acquired by a larger corporation called Nexus Global. The news sent shockwaves through the company. People were terrified about layoffs, about restructuring, about what this would mean for their jobs. Even Victoria seemed nervous, though she tried to hide it behind her usual mask of cold confidence. The CEO of Nexus Global was a mysterious figure named Jonathan Reeves. No one knew much about him. He had built his empire from nothing, starting with a small tech company in his early 20s and growing it into a multinational conglomerate through a combination of brilliance, vision, and an almost supernatural ability to identify undervalued assets. He was notoriously private, rarely appearing in public, and almost never visiting the companies he acquired in person. But he was coming to Pinnacle. The entire office buzzed with nervous energy as the day of the visit approached. Victoria spent hours preparing a presentation designed to showcase the department's achievements and, more importantly, her own contributions. She was determined to impress Jonathan Reeves, to position herself as an indispensable asset to the new regime. On the day of the visit, everyone dressed in their finest clothes and gathered in the main conference room. Victoria stood at the front, her presentation loaded and ready, her smile practiced and perfect. The executives from Nexus Global arrived first, a group of serious-faced men and women in expensive suits. And then, finally, Jonathan Reeves walked through the door. He was tall and distinguished, with gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. Behind him walked a younger woman, his assistant perhaps, who carried a tablet and spoke quietly into an earpiece. Victoria stepped forward, her hand extended. "Mr. Reeves, it's an honor to meet you. I'm Victoria Ashford, Senior Marketing Director. I prepared a presentation that I think you'll find very interesting." Jonathan Reeves shook her hand briefly, then looked past her, scanning the room. His eyes moved over the assembled employees, one by one, as if searching for something, or someone, and then he stopped. His gaze locked onto Marcus, who was standing near the back of the room, trying to be as invisible as possible. A slow smile spread across Jonathan Reeves's face. "Marcus," he said, his voice warm, "it's been a long time." Every head in the room turned to stare at Marcus. Victoria's perfectly practiced smile faltered. Marcus stepped forward, and to the shock of everyone watching, Jonathan Reeves pulled him into a firm embrace. "Too long," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's good to see you, Uncle John." The room went silent. Victoria's face drained to color. "Uncle," Marcus had called the CEO of Nexus Global, the man who had just bought their company, "Uncle." Jonathan turned to address the room, his hand still on Marcus's shoulder. "For those of you who don't know, Marcus Thompson is my nephew. His mother was my sister, God rest her soul. When she passed away 15 years ago, I made her a promise that I would always look out for her son." He paused, his expression growing more serious. "Which is why I was very interested to learn that Marcus has been working here for the past 8 months, and very disturbed to learn how he has been treated." Victoria's mouth opened, but no words came out. Jonathan continued, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "You see, Marcus never told me he was working here. He wanted to prove himself on his own merits, without any help from me. That's the kind of man he is. Proud, hardworking, determined." He looked directly at Victoria now. "But I have eyes and ears everywhere, Ms. Ashford, and I know exactly what has been happening in this office." Victoria found her voice. "Mr. Reeves, I don't know what you've heard, but I can assure you—" "You can assure me of nothing," Jonathan interrupted, his voice suddenly cold. "I have emails. I have testimonies. I have documented evidence of a pattern of harassment and abuse directed at my nephew. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Victoria's legs seemed to give out. She grabbed the edge of the conference table for support, her face white as a sheet. Jonathan turned back to Marcus. "I know you wanted to do this on your own, and I respect that. But I'm not going to stand by and watch you suffer. Not anymore." Marcus looked at his uncle with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "Uncle John, you didn't have to do this. I was handling it." "I know you were," Jonathan said softly. "But you shouldn't have to. Not alone." He turned to address the entire room again. "Let me make something very clear. Nexus Global does not tolerate harassment or discrimination of any kind. Every employee deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their position, their background, or their family connections." His eyes swept over the assembled staff. "I will be conducting a thorough review of the culture and practices at Pinnacle. Those who have acted with integrity will be rewarded. Those who have not will face consequences." His gaze settled on Victoria one final time. "Ms. Ashford, you and I will be having a private conversation later today. I suggest you use the time before then to reflect on your actions." Victoria nodded mutely, unable to speak. The meeting was adjourned, and people began to file out, everyone stealing glances at Marcus and whispering among themselves. Eleanor Chen made her way through the crowd and touched Marcus's arm. "I always knew there was something special about you," she said, her eyes shining with tears. "But this, I never would have guessed." Marcus managed a small smile. "I'm still the same person, Mrs. Chen." Nothing's changed. Everything's changed, she corrected gently. And it's about time. Later that afternoon, Victoria sat in her office, waiting for Jonathan Reeves to summon her. Her mind was racing, trying to figure out how to spin this, how to salvage her career. She had built everything on her position at Pinnacle. If she lost this job, especially under these circumstances, she would be finished in the industry. But as she sat there, something unexpected happened. She began to think, really think, about the things she had done. The coffee she had accidentally spilled on Marcus, the impossible deadlines, the cruel comments, the weekend she had forced him to wait, knowing it would mean he would miss something important. She hadn't known about his daughter. She hadn't known about his wife dying. She hadn't bothered to learn anything about him at all, because she hadn't considered him worth knowing. For the first time in a very long time, Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in years: shame. She thought about her own father, the great William Ashford, who had handed her everything on a silver platter while demanding that she be the best, that she crush anyone who stood in her way. She thought about her mother, who had disappeared when Victoria was 12, unable to bear the pressure of being William's wife anymore. She thought about the lonely childhood, the impossible expectations, the constant message that love was conditional and had to be earned through achievement. She had become her father. The realization hit her like a physical blow. When the summons finally came, Victoria walked to Jonathan Reeves's temporary office on shaking legs. She expected to be fired. She expected to be publicly humiliated, the way she had publicly humiliated Marcus so many times. Instead, she found Jonathan sitting calmly behind the desk, with Marcus seated beside him. There was no anger in either of their faces, just quiet resolution. "Sit down, Miss Ashford," Jonathan said. "Victoria Saturday." Jonathan studied her for a long moment. "I want you to understand something. I could end your career right now. I have the power and the justification to do it. But that's not what Marcus wants." Victoria turned to Marcus, unable to hide her shock. "What?" Marcus met her eyes steadily. "I've spent the last 3 years watching my daughter grow up without her mother. I've learned what's really important and what isn't. Revenge isn't important. Punishment isn't important. What's important is growth. Change. Becoming better than we were yesterday." He leaned forward slightly. "I'm not going to pretend you didn't hurt me. You did. But I've also seen the way you push yourself, the way you drive yourself to exhaustion trying to prove something to someone, and I recognize that desperation. I've felt it too. We're not so different, Victoria. We're both just trying to survive." Victoria felt tears prickling in her eyes, tears she hadn't shed in years. "I don't understand. After everything I did to you, why would you give me a second chance?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because someone gave me a second chance once. When Denise died, I was lost. I didn't know how to go on. I almost gave up. But then I looked at my daughter, and I realized that I had a choice. I could let my pain turn me into something hard and cold, or I could let it open my heart to others who are suffering." He paused. "You're suffering, Victoria. I can see it. And I think you deserve the chance to become someone different. Someone better." Victoria couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They streamed down her face, ruining her perfect makeup, and for once, she didn't care. "I don't know how to be different," she whispered. "I don't know how to be better." "That's okay," Marcus said gently. "None of us do, at first. But we learn. We grow. Like caterpillars turning into butterflies." Victoria looked at him, confused by the reference. Marcus smiled. "Something my daughter taught me." Jonathan cleared his throat. "Ms. Ashford, here's what's going to happen. You will not be fired, but you will be required to undergo extensive training in leadership and workplace conduct. You will also be required to work directly with Marcus on the special project I have in mind, under his supervision. And if I receive any reports of continued harassment or discrimination from anyone in this company, you will be terminated immediately, and I will personally ensure that you never work in this industry again. Do I make myself clear?" Victoria nodded, wiping her eyes. "Yes, perfectly clear." "Good." Jonathan stood up. "I'll give you two a moment." He left the room, closing the door softly behind him. Victoria and Marcus sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Victoria spoke. "I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just because I got caught, but because what I did was wrong. I was cruel to you for no reason other than my own insecurity. I made your life miserable because I was miserable, and I didn't know how to deal with my own pain except by inflicting it on others. That's not an excuse. There is no excuse. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I was doing. And I'm sorry. I'm truly, deeply sorry." Marcus nodded slowly. "I appreciate that, and I accept your apology." Victoria let out a shaky breath. "What happens now?" "Now?" Marcus smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Now we start over. We try to be better than we were yesterday. And we see what happens." Over the following months, Victoria underwent a transformation that no one at Pinnacle would have believed possible. She threw herself into the leadership training, not just going through the motions, but really engaging with the material, really trying to understand the impact of her behavior on others. She worked alongside Marcus on the special project, a community outreach initiative that Jonathan had envisioned, and she discovered something surprising. She actually enjoyed working with him. He was brilliant, creative, and endlessly patient. He challenged her to be better without ever making her feel inferior. And slowly, tentatively, a friendship began to form. One evening, about 4 months after the acquisition, Victoria stayed late at the office to finish up some work. On her way out, she passed Marcus's desk and saw a photo she had never noticed before. It was his wallpaper, a picture of a little girl in a dance costume, captured mid-leap. "Is that your daughter?" she asked. Marcus looked up and smiled. "Yeah, that's Zoe. That picture was taken at her dance recital, the one I missed because I was here working on the Peterson project." Victoria felt the shame wash over her again. "The one I made you miss." "Yeah." Marcus's voice was gentle, without accusation. "But it's okay. Patricia got that picture for me." And Zoe understood. Kids are resilient like that. Victoria stared at the photo for a long moment. Then she said, "Would you tell me about her? About Zoe?" Marcus looked surprised, but then he nodded. "Sure. What do you want to know?" They talked for almost 2 hours. Marcus told Victoria about Zoe's love of dancing, her fascination with butterflies, her endless questions about the world. He told her about Denise, about the love they had shared, about the devastating loss he had endured. And Victoria listened, really listened, for perhaps the first time in her life. When Marcus finally finished, Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "She sounds amazing. Both of them." "They are," Marcus agreed. "They are the best parts of my life." Victoria hesitated, then said, "I know I have no right to ask this, but would it be okay if I met her someday? Zoe, I'd like to apologize to her too, for taking her father away from her recital." Marcus studied her face, as if trying to gauge her sincerity. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he nodded. "I'd like that. I think Zoe would like that too. She's always asking me why I seem happier at work these days." "You seem happier." "Yeah." Marcus smiled. "Imagine that." 2 weeks later, Victoria met Zoe for the first time. They went to a park, the three of them, and Zoe showed Victoria her favorite climbing tree and taught her about the life cycle of butterflies. Victoria was awkward at first, unused to children, unsure how to act. But Zoe's openness and warmth gradually drew her out of her shell. At one point, Zoe looked up at Victoria with those big brown eyes and said, "Daddy says you used to be mean, but now you're nice. Is that true?" Victoria felt her cheeks flush. "Yes, sweetheart, that's true. I used to be mean, and I'm very sorry for that. But I'm trying to be nice now. Your daddy is helping me." Zoe nodded sagely, as if this made perfect sense. "That's good. Daddy says everybody can change, like caterpillars turning into butterflies. Maybe you're turning into a butterfly." Victoria felt tears prick at her eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of shame. They were tears of hope. "Maybe I am," she whispered. "Maybe I am." 1 year later, Pinnacle Marketing Solutions had been fully integrated into Nexus Global and had become one of the most successful divisions in the company. Marcus had been promoted to Director of Special Projects, overseeing initiatives that made a real difference in communities around the world. Victoria had become one of his most trusted collaborators, and their partnership had produced results that exceeded everyone's expectations. But more importantly, both of them had found something they had been missing for a long time. Marcus had found a sense of validation, a recognition that his worth wasn't defined by his position or his salary, but by who he was as a person. And Victoria had found something she hadn't even known she was looking for: redemption. On the anniversary of the acquisition, Jonathan Reeves hosted a celebration at Pinnacle. Everyone was there, from the newest interns to the most senior executives. Speeches were made, toasts were raised, and there was an atmosphere of genuine joy and camaraderie that would have been unthinkable just a year ago. Toward the end of the evening, Victoria found herself standing next to Eleanor Chen, the kind HR manager who had shown Marcus such compassion during his darkest days. "You've changed," Eleanor said, studying Victoria with those gentle, perceptive eyes. "Really changed. I wasn't sure it was possible, but you've proven me wrong." Victoria smiled, a real smile, not the cold, practiced one she had worn like armor for so many years. "Marcus showed me that it was possible. He gave me a chance when no one else would have. I'll never be able to repay him for that." Eleanor nodded. "That's the thing about kindness. It doesn't ask for repayment. It just asks to be passed on." Victoria thought about that for a moment. Then she said, "You're right, and I intend to spend the rest of my life doing exactly that." Across the room, Marcus was talking to Jonathan, but his eyes kept drifting to Zoe, who was twirling on the dance floor with some of the other children who had been brought to the party. She was wearing a butterfly costume, her favorite, and she looked like pure joy incarnate. Jonathan followed Marcus's gaze and smiled. "She's something special." "She is," Marcus agreed. "She's my whole world." "You know," Jonathan said thoughtfully, "your mother would be so proud of you, not because of your job or your title, but because of the man you've become, the father you are, the way you've touched so many lives, including mine." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. "I miss her every day." "I know. So do I." Jonathan put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "But she lives on in you, in Zoe, in every act of kindness you show to others, even those who don't deserve it." He paused. "Especially those who don't deserve it." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. Later that night, after the party had ended and the office had emptied out, Marcus walked through the choir halls one last time before heading home. He passed Victoria's office and saw that the light was still on. He knocked softly and pushed the door open. Victoria was sitting at her desk, but she wasn't working. She was looking at something on her computer screen. When Marcus got closer, he saw that it was a photo of herself and Zoe at the park, the day they had first met. Zoe was making a silly face, and Victoria was laughing, a genuine, unguarded laugh that Marcus had never seen from her before that day. That's a good picture, Marcus said. Victoria looked up, startled, then smiled. It's my favorite. I look at it whenever I need a reminder of why I'm doing this, why I'm trying so hard to be different. Marcus sat down across from her. You don't have to try so hard anymore, Victoria. You already are different. I see it every day. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone. Of course. When I was growing up, my father used to tell me that kindness was weakness, that the only way to survive in this world was to be harder, colder, more ruthless than everyone else. I believed him. I spent my whole life believing him. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. But you showed me that he was wrong. Kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing there is. It takes more courage to be kind than to be cruel, and it can change everything. It changed me. Marcus reached across the desk and took her hand. Your father was wrong about a lot of things, but he was right about one thing. You are a survivor. You survived him. You survived your own worst instincts. And now you're thriving. That takes strength, Victoria. Real strength. Victoria squeezed his hand, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, Marcus, for everything, for giving me a chance, for showing me who I could be, for not giving up on me when everyone else would have. That's what friends do, Marcus said simply. They don't give up on each other. Friends. It was a word Victoria hadn't used in a long time, hadn't really understood in a long time. But she understood it now. Friends, she repeated, smiling through her tears. I like that. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, two people who had started as enemies and become something much more. Outside the window, the city lights twinkled like stars, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Finally, Victoria said, So what happens now? Marcus smiled. The same question she had asked him a year ago in Jonathan's office, on the worst and best day of her life. Now, he said, now we go home and get some rest. And tomorrow we come back and we keep trying to be better than we were today. That's all any of us can do. Victoria nodded, wiping her eyes. I like that plan. Good. Marcus stood up and offered her his hand. Come on, I'll walk you out. They walked out of the building together, into the cool night air. Above them, the moon was full and bright, casting silver light over everything it touched. It was a night for new beginnings, for fresh starts, for caterpillars becoming butterflies. And as Victoria walked to her car, she realized something that made her stop in her tracks. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she wasn't dreading tomorrow. She was looking forward to it. She was looking forward to her life. She had spent so many years being afraid, being angry, being cruel. But that was over now. Marcus had shown her another way, a better way, and she was never going back. She got into her car and sat there for a moment, just breathing. Then she pulled out her phone and sent a text to Marcus. Thank you, she wrote, for everything. His response came almost immediately. That's what friends are for. Get home safe. Victoria smiled, started her car, and drove off into the night. Behind her, in the office building, a light went off in a window. And somewhere in the city, in a small apartment filled with love, a little girl in butterfly pajamas was dreaming of dancing. Marcus arrived home to find Zoe already asleep, her stuffed butterfly clutched in her arms. Patricia, who had been watching her, gave Marcus a tired smile and headed home. Marcus stood in his daughter's doorway for a long moment, just watching her breathe. He thought about everything that had happened, the humiliation, the struggle, the unexpected reunion with his uncle, the slow, painful transformation of his greatest enemy into one of his closest friends. It had been a journey he never could have predicted, and he knew it wasn't over yet. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome. But for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face them. Because he wasn't alone anymore. He had his uncle. He had Eleanor. He had Victoria. And most importantly, he had Zoe. He walked over to his daughter's bed and kissed her forehead gently. "I love you, baby girl," he whispered, "more than you'll ever know." Zoe stirred slightly, a small smile crossing her sleeping face. "Love you too, Daddy," she murmured, still half asleep. Marcus smiled, turned off the light, and went to his own room. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he thought about butterflies and transformation and the incredible power of second chances. And he knew, with a certainty that went all the way to his bones, that everything was going to be okay. Life had humiliated him. Life had knocked him down again and again. But he had gotten back up every single time. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not the falls, but the rising. Not the pain, but what you did with it. Marcus closed his eyes and let sleep take him. And outside his window, the sun was already beginning to rise.